All right, so for today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the Knipex 7006 160 diagonal cutters. Now, these guys are coming in at roughly about 6.5 inches in length, so they're definitely not the smallest pair of diagonal cutters that Knipex makes, but they're also not the largest pair of diagonal cutters that Knipex makes. I would kind of consider them to be kind of like in the middle of the road kind of pair, where maybe you don't need a super tiny pair, but you also don't need a super large pair. I would consider this kind of be the tool that kind of fits in between there. Now, to start off the video here, these guys are going to be the insulated or the VDE handles. So we'll go ahead and take a look at the handles. Now, typically, on most of Knipex's VDE tools, you're going to have the yellow and the red on the coloring. And then you're also going to have the model number that the is listed on the tool, and this is going to be the steel, that's vanadium super, that these guys are made out of. And then coming down to here, you have all your certifications that the tool went through to prove that it can withstand 1,000 volts. Like I've said before in previous videos, I believe they test these up to 10,000 volts, and then they rate them for 1,000 volts. And then you also, like most, if not almost all of Knipex's pliers, these are going to be made in Germany. And then down here at the bottom, you are going to have the year that the tool was produced. So these guys were produced in 2024. And you typically see that on a lot of insulated tools, just so you can gauge how old the tool is, and if it is or isn't time to maybe start thinking about replacing it. And then coming on to the inside of the handle, again, you're going to have your made in Germany and some more certifications here on the inside of the handle. And that is going to be on both sides of the handle. I believe the handles are pretty much the same, and they just print the they just do the printing on them when it's all said and done. And then you're going to take a look at the handle. You have a nice Knipex logo and the yellow. It's just, for some reason, these grips, I just like them more than the just standard comfort grip handles, and obviously they're going to be a lot more comfortable than just the dipped handles. When I first started off, I was using a bunch of dipped handle tools, which got me by, and then decided to eventually go into the comfort grip style of tools and handles, and then kind of made my way over to these insulated style. I feel these are more comfortable than just the standard pair of comfort grip handles that Knipex has to offer. Now, these guys are going to be chrome plated. I don't think Knipex offers these in just the standard black oxide finish. I think these are only going to be in chrome plated. So if you're unfamiliar with chrome plated tools, generally what they do before they chrome plate it is they do all the finish grinding and everything on the tool, along with sharpening the cutting knives, and then they chrome plate it. Now, some people do like to make the point that chrome-plated tools aren't as sharp as just the standard black oxide tools, so you may or may not experience that for yourself. But you do have the Knipex logo there, which is a part of the forging of the plier, and then you have the model number and made in Germany laser etched onto the surface. And then coming up to the cutting knives, you have a fairly long pair of cutting knives for the size of these pliers, which is going to allow you to cut multiple of the thinner conductors if that's what you are looking to do, and you can also cut some thicker conductors as well. And then coming over to this side, most of the older Knipex tools that I've reviewed here on the channel have barcodes on the back. I've started to notice that on some of the newer tools, they are going away from the barcodes on this side. And this side is relatively plain. You can kind of see where they punch the rivet into the tool. And that's pretty much it for the detail on these pliers. Now we'll go ahead and zoom out here and get through some of the functionality. So these guys are a little bit on the stiff side, but once they get past that initial point, they do like to open up, but they are somewhat loose in the hand when using them. So we'll go ahead and bring in some wire and see how well these guys can cut. So we're going to go ahead and bring in some 12 gauge stranded wire, and we'll go ahead and cut that, and it cuts through that like butter. It's a relatively smooth cut. Now let's see if I can do this right. I can also strip that wire with these, so that is a plus side. So that was some 12 gauge stranded wire. We'll throw that off to the side, and we'll bring in our next wire, which is going to be some 10 gauge stranded wire, and we'll see how well we can cut through these. So you definitely cut through that 10 gauge stranded wire fairly easily. You don't really have any complaints about how it cuts through that. Now let's see if I can strip this 10 gauge wire, and indeed I am also able to strip that 10 gauge wire, so that will work for that. So we'll slide that off to the side, and we'll bring in a more of a multi-conductor wire. So this is just some wire that I imported from the UK. It's 3 stranded wires there on the inside. Let's go ahead and see if we can cut through that with these, and we are able to cut through that without any issue. So that is a plus. Now we're going to bring in some thermostat wire. I feel like these will be able to cut through this wire. This is going to be 18.5 thermostat wire, so we have, or excuse me, this is 18.8 thermostat wire, so we have 8 18 gauge wires there on the inside. So we'll go ahead and we can chop through those without an issue. And if I needed to cut more of this thermostat wire down, I indeed can. Now, the more the conductors you get, the more pressure or the more force you're going to have to apply to cut through it. And you can definitely feel it when cutting through this 18.8 thermostat wire. So I'll set that off to the side, and I'll bring in some 14 gauge Romex wire, and we'll go ahead and give this guy a cut. And you can cut through that 14 gauge without an issue. And you can definitely hear the snapping sound gets a little bit louder as you cut through it. And I guess finally we'll bring in 3 10 gauge stranded wires, and we'll go ahead and see if we can cut through these without any issues. Which we were able to cut through all the other wires. I don't know why I wouldn't be able to cut through these. We'll go ahead and cut through 3 of those conductors. Definitely have to use quite a bit of force to do it. So if you're going to be cutting through multiple strands of 10 gauge stranded wire, I definitely would recommend you, if you're going to be doing this day in, day out, go ahead and cut that one more time. If you're going to be cutting through multiple strands of 10 gauge wire, I definitely would recommend that you probably want to upgrade to a little bit larger pair of diagonal cutters. Maybe like the 8-inch pair. I think the 7-inch pair, you probably wouldn't have to use as much force, but if it was me, I would just upgrade to the 8-inch pair, where you're going to be able to cut through multiple conductors a lot easier than you would be able to do with this guy. But if you're having to only cut through, maybe you're only working with 14 gauge and below, and you're cutting through multiple conductors at once, these should have no problem blasting through those if you're cutting multiple of them once, day in, day out. But like I said, if you're working with 10 gauge wire on a daily basis and you're cutting more than just one conductor at a time, you probably want to look at upgrading to, like I said, the 8-inch or maybe the 10-inch pair that Knipex has to offer. So with that being said, that's pretty much all I have for this review. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to leave them down in the comment section below. And as always, thanks for watching.